Hi everyone, good evening. Welcome to Gnan Cloud Garage. In this session, I'm going to talk about vMotion and storage vMotion deep dive troubleshooting. So here is the agenda. Before we understand the vMotion and SvMotion troubleshooting scenarios, first it requires some basic concepts. That is, we need to understand virtual machine troubleshooting and vSphere migration architecture, and then what are the types of vSphere migrations and comparison. Then finally, we can understand what are the vMotion and SvMotion troubleshooting scenarios. Okay, and virtual machine troubleshooting in short form VM. As we are aware, virtual machine means it is a software generated machine and looks like a physical machine. And if you want to prepare a virtual machine architecture, we require one hardware. Hardware means key component CPU, memory, disk, and network. On top of the hardware, we can install the ESXi hypervisor, and using ESXi, it allows you to create multiple virtual machine. For easy understanding, I took one virtual machine, and virtual machine consists of all the virtual devices, and main devices are vCPU. Whatever we have in the hardware CPU, it become as vCPU, vmemory, vdisk, and vnic. And inside the virtual machine, we can install the guest operating system and applications. So this is our virtual machine high level architecture. If even if you want to troubleshoot your virtual machine, the troubleshooting can be starts from top to bottom, or you can start from bottom to top, or you can start in the middle. It's completely your convenience, but any one level we should start the troubleshooting and we should cover all the layers. That is the key point here. And the virtual machine runs as process on the ESXi host, and troubleshooting is split into two categories. First one is inside the guest OS, and second one is ESXi host level troubleshooting. Inside the guest OS, standard OS troubleshooting should be used, including the OS specific logs. Like whenever any Windows operating system affected with a blue screen of death, we can use memory.dmp log file. Okay, and even similarly, even in the all the system related logs and all, we can verify from the C drive Windows folder. And ESXi host level troubleshooting concerning virtual machine process, where the log file for the virtual machine is reviewed for errors. Even if any specific virtual machine, if a customer raise a complaint that one of the virtual machine having a performance issue, so what we can do, we can log into the vCenter server and search the virtual machine name in our vCenter. When once you search the VM, and we come to know this VM is running on which ESXi host. So in that ESXi host, you can verify, go to the virtual machine in the right side, go to the task and events section, configuration tab, task and events. You can verify, are there any warning messages or error messages. If there are no warnings and errors, then we can verify the performance. What is the current virtual machine CPU usage, memory usage, disk and network related usage. If you've noticed any abnormality, accordingly we can start the troubleshooting. That is one method of starting the troubleshooting. And another method is ESXi host virtual machine log files are in the directory which the virtual machine runs by default. Every virtual machine stored in a ESXi host associated data stores. Most of the time data stores can be a shared data store. Within the data store, every virtual machine have one virtual machine directory, and the specific virtual machine directory, let's say we have VM1, VM2. VM1 have a separate folder, VM2 have a separate folder. Every virtual machine have one of the log file. That log file, call it as vmware.log. All virtual machines, events, tasks, information is stored on a vmware.log file. In case of virtual machine abnormalities or any unexpected errors, first you can try to find from the graphical vCenter level. If you didn't find much clues, if you want to investigate, deep dive into some more additional clues, you can go to the vmware.log file. It will help you to show you the some more additional information. Okay, and generally issues occur as a result of a problem in the guest OS. Host level crashes of the VM process are relatively rare, are normally a result of hardware errors or compatibility of hardware between host. This is the most common repeated virtual machine layer issues. Okay, now Let's talk about what is the vSphere migration architecture. Before we deep dive into vMotion and SvMotion troubleshooting, we need to understand what is our vSphere migration architecture in vCenter level. Let's say, let's understand this architectural diagram. If you notice here, the left portion we have a ESXi host, it's connected to the shared storage, and inside shared storage we have a virtual machine disk. And on top of the ESXi host, we can on top of the hardware we install the ESXi host. On top of ESXi we can create multiple VMs, but for our easy understanding I'm just showing you one virtual machine, and virtual machine connected to the network A. And to manage multiple ESX, we require a vCenter, and we also maintaining another vCenter just for our easy understanding. And we have another host running with ESXi, and it will also have a shared storage. And these both hosts connected with a VMware vSphere vMotion network. This is the pre-requirement to migrate the virtual machine from one ESXi host to another ESXi host. Suppose let's talk about the ESXi host level migration. If I want to move this virtual machine from this ESX1 to ESX2, how we can migrate is you can just migrate, right click the VM, select the virtual machine, migrate, so that it will migrate to the second destination ESXi host. That means we are just to change the host for the VM. This is called vMotion, or we call it as live migration. This is one type of migration. Similarly, we also have other type of migration. Instead of changing the host, we are just moving the virtual machine storage from one virtual machine disk from one data store to another data store. For our easy identification, I just took the diagram of hard disk. That is nothing but a virtual machine disk files. If you want to migrate the virtual machine disk file from one data store to another data store, that is nothing but a storage vMotion. So it will change the data store from source to destination. This is called storage vMotion. So we understand vMotion architecture, storage vMotion architecture. Now, we also have another option in vSphere 7. Without shared storage also, we can migrate the virtual machine from one ESXi host to another ESXi host through the network only. Okay, so it's a completely network level migration. It's not require any shared storage. And along with these three options, we also have another option is even we can migrate the virtual machine from one vCenter server to another vCenter also. That is nothing but a, see, we can migrate the VM from one vCenter to another vCenter, but only condition is our both vCenter servers should be in a vCenter linked mode connection. Then only we can perform all this type of migration. Suppose if I want to perform a virtual machine migration from one host to another host, on live means vMotion. If you power off that VM, we call it as a cold migration. Okay, this is the high level virtual machine migration architecture. In this diagram, you can understand how many scenarios we may find for troubleshooting. For example, if I want to migrate the VM from ESX1 to ESX2, if my ESX2 is running with a different CPU model, instead of Intel family, it is using a AMD family. Definitely migration may fail. That is one scenario. Let's talk about the memory. Let's say I'm planning to migrate the VM from ESX1 to ESX2. If you do not have enough memory on your destination, definitely migration may stuck at 20%, 30%, sometimes 80%. Certain percentage level, migration may stuck because we do not have enough memory resources on destination ESX host. That is another scenario. And network perspective, VMware recommend that we must have a 1 Gbps network speed, and also VM kernel port group must be created. vMotion VM kernel port group must be created on both ESX hosts. Suppose you miss to create a VM kernel port group on destination ESX host, definitely our migration may fail. And even if you want to migrate VM from one vCenter to another vCenter, we must have a compatibility. That means if our source vCenter is in a 7 series, our destination vCenter server also should be 7 series. If you are using a lower version, definitely there will be a virtual machine hardware version compatibility. Always we can migrate from lower version to higher version, but if you planning for higher version to lower version migration, there should be, we need to validate whether it is have a downward compatibility or not. If we do not have a downgrade compatibility, we may get into the errorish scenario. Okay, so this is how all the scenarios in a migration scenario. Whatever we discuss in the vMotion scenario, similarly, it's applicable for storage vMotion as well. Even if you want to perform a storage vMotion, all the vMotion conditions, SvMotion conditions should be met. Those conditions are like our all ESXi host, source and destination ESX host should be fully qualified domain name, CPU family should be same family, and we should have enough resources in the destination ESXi host, and it require a shared storage. But in the nowadays, in the latest one, without shared storage also we can perform the migration. And if your ESX both source and destination is running with the same Intel family with a different model, like source is in a gold model Intel processor, destination is a platinum Intel model processor, that scenario it's recommended to enable EVC mode, enhanced vMotion compatibility mode. That is also one recommendation. This is a high level vSphere migration architecture. Why we are talking about migration architecture is, as I experienced it personally, me and also the some of my friends also told me, these days some of the interviews they are also asking us to draw the architectural diagram. First and second rounds they may conduct for a screening round, second round will be technical round, third round they may ask for the presentation sessions. During the presentation sessions, either it will be on a whiteboard or they may give you one white paper and they will ask us to draw the architectural diagram. They may give you one scenario and we have to write the architectural diagram. So whatever the scenario in our vSphere, every concept we talk about the architectural, like ESX architecture, vCenter architecture, virtual machine architecture, same way this migration architecture. Whatever the interviewer asks for the specific architecture, we should be ready to draw the architecture also. Even when we have a clear picture on architecture, it's easy to explain also the concept. Okay. Now, the key point here is simultaneously change host and storage. That is the importance of migration. When we do vMotion, host will change. When we do storage vMotion, storage will change. And vSphere vMotion also allows both storage and host to be changed at the same time. Okay, in vSphere 7.x, and 7.x means 7.0 update 1, update 2, and update 3. And even I just come to get to know that even in future VMware come up with a 8 series, maybe this year or next year, but officially they will announce soon. 8 is also on the way. Maybe what I'm guessing is we already have a vSphere, VROps, login site, and also the VRA, VRO, all are in a 8 series. They are matching the vSphere also with 8 series in future. Okay, so but currently still as of today we have a 7.0 update 1, update 2, update 3. But all these 7 series flavor, the VM can be migrated between networks and vCenter server without shared storage. That option is available. Okay, now what are the types of vSphere migrations and comparison? So vSphere migration, whatever we discuss now, let's understand the comparison between every migration. So as we know, the migrations are types of migration. Cold migration. Cold migration is nothing but a migrate a power of virtual machine from a host to new host or from a data store to new data store. When the VM is in power off state, remember that that is called cold migration. And when the VM is in suspend state, that means right click the VM, there is an option for suspend. This suspend option generally we recommend to use if you want to find virtual machine blue dump screen issue logs. Like blue dump screen means it's a BSOD, BSOD, blue screen of death. When the Windows server come up with a blue screen issue, if you want to send the logs to the Microsoft team, normally we'll extract the memory.dmp file and send it to the Microsoft. Some cases, Microsoft may not find the clues on memory.dmp file. That time, what Microsoft recommend us is they recommend to place the virtual machine into suspend state. During the suspend, VM also generate a one memory.swap file will generate. That memory dump file also we need to send it to the Microsoft technical support team for further investigation. That time we'll use commonly the suspend option, or else most of the time VM can be power on state. When it is needed, we can power off, power on, restart. Okay. And vMotion, we can also call it as live migration or hot migration. So vMotion means migrate power on virtual machine from one host to another host without downtime. Okay, and storage vMotion. Storage vMotion also it's a kind of live migration only. So migrate a power on virtual machine files from one data store to another data store without a downtime. Okay, and shared nothing. That means without shared storage also we can perform the migration over the network. Okay, this is the types of migration. Now let's talk about the comparison, like power of migration, like cold migration. VM state is power off. Suspend means suspend state, vMotion, storage vMotion, and shared nothing scenario. It's all in a power on state. Suppose change host, change data store. Cold migration generally we can do the both. We can change host and data store, and suspend scenario also we can perform both. And vMotion scenario it will change only the host. And the storage vMotion scenario it will change only the data store. And shared nothing also can perform in a both host and data store level, and across vCenter also it's compatible except the storage vMotion. Storage vMotion is only within a vCenter level, and the shared storage required. Normally for cold and suspend shared storage is not required, and SvMotion also without shared storage also we can migrate the virtual machine from shared this data store to local disk. The local storage also we can migrate. That's why it's mentioned as no. And shared nothing also doesn't require a shared storage. And CPU compatibility for cold migration without any there is no issues with the CPU. Different family CPU also we can migrate, but in the suspend also must meet CPU compatibility requirement. And vMotion we are already aware CPU should be same CPU family, either Intel or AMD. And shared nothing also must meet CPU compatibility. And storage vMotion, there is no CPU issues because we are not touching the CPU. We are just migrating the virtual machine files from one data store to another data store. This is the differences between all our migration. These scenarios also we may get in the interview. Interviewer may come up with any scenario. So understand the scenario, you can answer. Okay. And what are the vMotion and SvMotion troubleshooting scenarios? So troubleshooting scenario is the key point now. So vSphere, vMotion and SvMotion are some of the best logged features in vSphere. During the starting days of vSphere, the main selling points for the vSphere product is vMotion, SvMotion, HADRS. These four are the very key, plays a key role to sell the vSphere product. Okay, each migration that occurs has a unique migration ID. Migration ID short form is MID. So this is the important point that can be used to search the log for the vSphere vMotion and vSphere storage vMotion. So whatever the issue happen when performing a vMotion, SvMotion, most of this time, every migration have a one unique migration ID. Okay, that migration ID looks like this. It have a one numerical number. Each time vSphere vMotion and SvMotion is attempted, all logs can be reviewed to find the error using the grep command and searching for the term migrate. You can use the keyword migrate to find the actual errors. But while performing the investigation for your vMotion errors and SvMotion errors, remember that we need to verify on both source and destination. If you are using a vMotion logs, we need to verify on source ESXi host, destination ESXi host. Same way, if you are performing a storage vMotion, verify the logs on source data store side and destination data store level. Okay, that should be reviewed. And the main log file to perform the further investigation is main logs are four logs: VM kernel log, hostd log, vmware.log, and vpxt log. And VM kernel logs usually contain storage or network errors and possibly vSphere vMotion and vSphere storage vMotion timeouts. This timeouts information we can find in a vmware kernel.log. This log stored under the /var/log location. And hostd log. Hostd log also contains interaction between vCenter and ESXi. And VMware log, virtual machine log file, which will show issues with starting the virtual machine processes. And VPXT log, we are aware that is a virtual center agent log. This virtual center level log, sorry, agent log means VPXA. And VPXT means it is also consists of vSphere vMotion as seen from vCenter normally shows the timeout or other irrelevant data because the errors are occurring on the host itself. Okay, I will show you one example how we can verify the VM kernel log on source level and destination level. See vSphere, vMotion troubleshooting. Example, VM kernel log on source level. The log is looks like this. When you open a log, the mainly the timestamp we can see, and we can have when the vMotion is started, and while doing the vMotion, is there any information is stored? All information you will find here. For example, here it is showing as vMotion have a one migration ID. This is the key point here. Okay, and another key point is you can find source. That means we are using a source ESXi host. You can see yes colon. That means pre-copy memory is already initiated. Okay, yes is nothing but a source. So we found the clue migration ID we found, and we also found the source information on a VM kernel.log, and we even will find some error messages also on a VMware kernel.log. From this error message, we can notice that somehow there is a timeout at the certain percentage. During this scenario, most of the time, if the vMotion is stopped or hung, any scenario, the normal recommended solution is we have to restart the host D agent service. Like we can use /etc/init.d /host D space restart. When you restart the host D command and again retry the vMotion, it will success. Most of the vMotion failures, that is a common solution. And apart from this, remember that if you want to perform vMotion from one host to another host, we should meet all the conditions. The conditions are CPU family should be same, we should have enough resources, network VM kernel port group must be created on destination. If you doesn't meet any vMotion condition, also vMotion fail. And other than that, if you already meet the condition, still vMotion is failing, sometimes it may require to restart the hosted agent service. When you restart the hosted agent service and resume the vMotion, it will go through normally. Okay. Other than that, if you find any additional errors also, you can find the error information from the VM kernel log. Okay, how we verified in the source. Similarly, we can also verify the log on a destination. Sometimes clues are available on source, sometimes clues you may find from the destination level. Okay, but the while during the troubleshooting perspective, we need to validate the both source and destination logs to find the actual to narrow down the actual clue from the log files only. Suppose here you will find the migration ID. This migration ID is same as the source migration ID. Okay, as we discussed, migration ID have a unique migration ID between source and destination. That is the key point here. Okay, and also we can look for a D. See, it is showing as D colon. That means changing the state. D is nothing but a destination. Okay, so we verified the migration ID, we verified the source information, destination information, and we found the timeout error. So the solution will be we have to restart the hostd agent service. Okay, so that is the vSphere and vMotion SvMotion troubleshooting scenarios. If any additional scenarios if I noticed, I will come up with a next session. That's it for today. Thank you. Please do you like, share and subscribe to my channel. If you're already subscribed to my channel, thanks for your support. If you're watching this video first time, please subscribe. Thank you. Bye for now.